happened? Hello and welcome to another episode of Queer Peer Reviews, where we review queer media good, bad, and ugly. I'm your host Jamie, and today with you is my co-host Pam.
Hi everyone! Here at Queer Peer Reviews, we review your favorite and not so favorite forms of queer media.
On today's episode of Queer Peer Reviews, we are reviewing, I think it's the first form of queer media in the new year after celebrating 2024.
Yeah.
It is Good Grief, which is on Netflix, and it is written and directed by Dan Levy.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you may know Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek, also Happiest Season, and a bunch of other stuff. He's a really funny guy, and oddly enough, this isn't a comedy film. Well, there are some funny parts. We have a comic relief character, but this is a movie that is a tragedy.
Yeah, it's really witty. It has a lot of great, memorable, run-on one-liners. So you can tell that there's that funny, dark humor twist to it, but it really doesn't focus on the humor of anything. It's quite serious.
Yeah. So this is a spoiler alert to those who haven't seen the film yet. The film is about Dan Levy's character. His husband passes away, on Christmas Day or around the holiday season, which makes the holidays extra tough for him.
Yeah.
He passes away in a car accident, and this is basically about his journey of recovering from loss. We learn throughout the story that they wound up having an open relationship that he didn't want to have, but his husband was kind of pushing for, and that he found somebody in Paris, which is why he was traveling to Paris in the first place, which got him into the car accident.
He brushed it off as a work thing, and then turns out his lover that his husband didn't know about had won a scholarship under his tutelage, something along those lines, and so it wasn't a short-term fling, it was a full-on relationship.
Which was against the rules they were going for. They just wanted, the husband just wanted to have casual flings, and was also urging Dan's character to, go sleep with other people.
Yeah.
Which he didn't want to do, which we learn, early on in the film.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's about him, his two friends. They discover that his deceased husband has an apartment in Paris, like you mentioned, and they travel to Paris just to have fun on the 1-year anniversary of his death.
Right. It was really crazy. I mean, they make a very strong point that he was really leaning on his two best friends after his husband's death, and it emphasizes that grief, it's not just something that passes within a month, as his friends were encouraging him to download dating apps and everything.
Yeah, the movie really explores how a lot of different people handle loss, and that nobody ever experiences loss the same way, because Dan mourned for almost a full year while his friends got over his husband's death before he did, 6 months in. The one girl, she was like, hey, I made you a dating app profile.
Yeah.
And then the other friend, he was kind of partial to him getting on a dating app, but yeah. Not gonna lie, when I did see the trailer, I expected myself to cry a lot more, and I do cry very easily during movies and shows when people die and stuff, and just sad stuff in general. But I didn't cry, I don't think I even cried.
Yeah, no. I don't think either of us did.
It was definitely really sad, but it all happens towards the beginning of the movie, and oddly enough, I wasn't attached to Oliver as much as they could have made us to make us mourn along with Mark.
Right. Mark's character clearly loved Oliver very much, but as the film progresses, they show aspects of Oliver's character, whether it was the lying or just extravagant secrecy, and I think that just made me feel even more detached from Oliver.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
It's very
definitely
easy to, lean towards not liking the character.
Yeah, it's hard for an audience to mourn over a character that they weren't really attached to in the first place. and then just start to not like him progressively throughout the story because of things he learned. But what are you gonna do? But yeah, while the movie basically revolved around Oliver's death as being like the biggest form of loss, not only is Mark like mourning the death of his husband, but he's now learning a year later that Oliver basically fell for somebody else as well.
Right. Yeah.
So now he's kind of like mourning that, and then also feeling super betrayed a year later.
I mean, I think a really important thing to note about, you know, his grieving process, Oliver wrote him a letter for the holiday, like for Christmas, and he didn't open it until a year after Oliver's passing. Who knows what the grief process would have looked like if he had opened the letter sooner?
Oh, yeah. I feel like he would have moved on a lot sooner.
Probably. But he probably also would have been angrier sooner. For all we know, he could have isolated instead of been out with friends, because it took him a long time to even tell his friends in the first place. He was really embarrassed about it because, you know, they thought his life was perfect. And I think partially he kind of thought his life was perfect too, you know? So for all of that to kind of not be completely gone, but half of that was gone because it left with Oliver, you know, it's a big change. And I think the grief aspect was not just for the loss of a person, but for the loss of a certain lifestyle and partnership and community in that sense.
But yeah, overall the movie's pretty good. It was like visually appealing as well. But as for the story, I would say it's kind of average. Didn't wow me as much as I thought it would. But we'll talk about that more in the ratings. Alright, so let's get to the ratings. Let's start with representation.
So for representation, we give it a
7.5 and a 7.
yeah.
I would say it was average in terms of portraying like queer representation. Obviously, Dan Levy's character is gay. We had that they were married, which was nice.
There was also the friends who were also gay, like at the art gallery scene.
Oh yeah, they had like the representation was there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was like went above and beyond to talk, like not to talk about queer representation, but it was just average, I would say, which isn't a bad thing.
I think it was just it wasn't a focal point, and I don't think that was necessarily what they were aiming for in the making of this movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's what impacts it, like makes the score a 7.5.
Yeah,
because obviously we don't want queerness to be the center point of all queer media. There's like this stereotype, and I think Oliver followed like this, like, oh, look at me, like I'm above everybody else, like don't touch me, I'm like, don't touch me, I gotta wash my hands now that's the type of person he gave me.
A little snobby, yeah.
A little snobby, a little toxic, you know.
Yeah.
Sprinkle in that toxicness.
Next up, writing.
And so for writing, we give it 7.5 and a 7.5 again.
Yeah.
Coming from a writer's standpoint, there was nothing about the script that really wowed me. It did feel very average and safe, I would say. I liked the dynamics, but also there were some dynamics about that friend group that kind of irked me. Like the whole fact that they got mad at Mark for like lying or keeping a secret that Oliver found somebody else. Like I feel, and it's not that he learned that over a year ago, he just learned about it.
Yeah.
And the whole apartment thing. Like I can guess you could be mad for a moment, but I don't know. It just didn't seem realistic to me. Also, the one friend who was like the comic relief character,
Yeah.
she got on my nerves a lot.
I feel like it was a bit of a futile attempt at not having boring side characters or having them feel mundane. But I don't feel like she was a comic relief, honestly. Like, it just felt very pick-me. Like, oh, let me just be the chaotic character, and then later on realize, like, oh, I was very self-absorbed or whatever. Because that happens as well, but it focused a lot on her. I feel like she got a lot of screen time for being a side character.
And the fact that, like, I feel like if you have a pick-me character that is as self-absorbed, it shouldn't be something where she realizes, like, oh yeah, no, I'm being too much. I feel like the other two friends should have at least snapped at her.
Yeah.
Or at least a little bit more. I feel like they should have been the ones that put her in her place and be like, hey, like, this isn't about you right now.
Yeah.
This is about this. But we didn't really get that.
Yeah, I feel like there was just an unestablished boundary line within the friend group that they didn't acknowledge until much later. But it definitely manages to irk us.
Yeah. And like I said before, it portrayed itself in the trailer, at least, as a movie that was going to make me sob my eyes out. Like, but there were no tears that I shed, and I cry very easily, so that says something. Next up, Originality.
Okay, for Originality, we give it an 8. Okay. Ooh, we match.
I would just want to say that whenever there's a movie about loss, most of the time it's always about finding love after loss.
Yeah.
How do we, like, move on with a new lover type thing? And while Mark did wind up finding some love, or temporary love, we're not really sure if it stays after this giant loss, it wasn't the main focus. Right. It was more about just, I guess, rediscovering yourself in a way, because Mark did learn a lot of things about himself and the reason why he does things the way he does. Like, I did really like at the end when he was talking to, she wasn't the therapist, she was the person with
the accountant,
like, handling the will and
advisor.
stuff like that. Yeah, he was saying how he was doing a lot of reading, and the reason why, like, loss affects you that way is because your brain develops patterns talking about, like, how you should be feeling about a certain person, and now that they're gone. Like, I did like that he discovered, like, why loss is so powerful. And why it makes you feel the way you do, which was cool. And that, like I said, like, that it wasn't another one of those, how do I move on and find my next love?
Right, it wasn't all the tactics to find your next partner.
Yeah. And again, gays, we usually get a lot of, like, comedy movies and happy movies, and now we have a loss movie. We need all the genres.
Yeah, that's fair. It's not really discussed. Last but not least, our overall feelings towards the film.
So for our overall feelings for Good Grief, we give it
7.5. I'd say for a movie about queer loss, I mean, it wasn't necessarily complicated. It was pretty straightforward. The secondary characters were definitely developed. They weren't just in the background. And they made a few solid points throughout the film. And there were a lot of beautiful scenic locations. I think that's what really boosted up the score for me, like the museum shot.
Museum.
I think that was really pretty. So I think those are my reasons for giving it a 7.5. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would agree with that. It was enjoyable. I know it was a little slow in some parts.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, I just kind of wish there was a little bit more to talk about. I don't know, just, I wish we got to know Oliver more before the death. That way we could have learned to like him before we were suddenly cut off from him.
Yeah.
Also, one of my favorite Letterboxd reviews that I saw for this film is that it was like a 2.5 star, and somebody said this was just Dan Levy's way of getting a paid vacation to Paris.
Wow, that's a line.
Anyway, not his words, not mine.
Yeah, those were not Jamie's words.
Alright, so for our QPR total for Good Grief, it gets a 75.5 out of 100, which is, I would say, a B-, I think.
I think so. I mean, I think it was a pretty enjoyable film. It tackled a really important topic. Again, we don't get to see it often. And from what I know, other than Dan Levy's other projects, this is like his first solo project as a film. So
I think it's something he could definitely do more of.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of his work because his writing is fairly unique. And I feel like this just didn't hit the mark compared to some of his other stuff. So, you know, I'd love to see future films from him, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is sometimes hard to create a film with like such a difficult topic of loss. Yeah. I did like that it kind of showed that not everyone experiences loss the same way. Like Dan just kind of wanted to mourn for a year, while his one friend, she wanted to immediately go out and like meet other people right after the breakup.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching another episode of Queer Peer Reviews. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if there's any other films you want us to review. Links down below. Follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.